Welcome back to the pod. This is season 2, episode 4, MTP3, Use and Connect Representations. Hi, this is Lola, and I wanted to start off with introducing MTP3, Use and Connect Representations. I wanted to start with kind of talking about a quote that I found from this article called Principles to Action. And it's effective teaching of mathematics engages students in making connections among mathematical representations to deepen understanding of math concepts and procedures for problem solving. I kind of shortened it down right now, but basically, I just think that it's really important for teachers to provide students with multiple means of representation so that every student can kind of benefit from each way of learning, because everybody learns very differently, and giving students different ways to solve it can maybe make them find their magic way, or the way that helps them work the best, or whatever. And then from that article, I also saw that there's 5 types of representations that we normally see when teaching, and it's visual, symbolizing, verbal, contextual, and physical. And I think that each of those are really good examples because they're all very different. They're different because you can visualize something while also having a physical diagram of something, because I know I've said it multiple times in this podcast that I'm a visual learner, and when I used to have physical diagrams of material, it would really help me understand the material a lot better than just hearing it and then digesting it from there. And then from that, I kind of wanted to see how we form connections with students. It's important to form not only mental connections with students, but showing the students how to form connections within themselves, within the content that they're learning, and just encouraging the students to find the right type of representation when solving a certain problem. A big thing for students is that they need to learn, the expectation for students is that they need to know when they should be using which form of representation to solve a certain problem. When we're teaching this, we want the students to truly understand and know what they're getting at, of where they should grab the right type of representation.
No, I agree, and I think I have a recent kind of example that in Dr. King's class, when we were doing the fractions with
I was just thinking that
with the pattern blocks and the
Cuisinart
rods.
Yeah.
That kind of goes with the representations, because it's both visual and physical, because you're seeing shapes, and you're also being able to move them and kind of okay, this doesn't work with what I need to split it up into, so I'll try this one instead. And I think that kind of trial and error, at least for me, that's the first time I felt okay, I can kind of do this myself by almost just playing around with it. And I think that's a good example to kind of throw out there for connecting the representations, not only to the problem on the board, but okay, if I wanted to come up with my own problem, I could use these same tools to solve that.
And at least just having one type of representation, I think is very important to add in your lesson. I mean, obviously you probably can't add all of them just because I feel it's a lot and you have to get through the lesson. But at least just add as much as you possibly can, just because you want to include that kind of that different way that students can learn, so that the other students can actually get it and understand the material a lot better.
But also teaching them in the first place, so students know that they have those tools to begin with is beneficial. Yeah.
What I thought Lilia was going to say is when we were in class and we were doing that reading, and it was talking about multiple representations. It was the one that you and I did together, Lilia, and it was students got really comfortable. Fraction representation. Students got really comfortable using the pie chart, the circle, to represent fractions, but that's not always going to work because sometimes it's just easier to do it other ways, especially in a fraction structure, or a tape diagram. Having, you said, giving students the different methods of representing different concepts is super important. Because if you just give them one and you're like, this is good, they're going to get really comfortable with it, and then they're going to try and do a problem where that's not exactly going to play out right, and they're going to be like, what? And the struggle that they're facing won't be productive.
Yeah, exactly. And with that, I also wanted to say I have 3 things written down for how we form connections with students. I already said the first one, but I'll say it again. We encourage purposeful selection of representations. Therefore, we have the 5 different types of representations for the students to choose out from. Another one is that the students engage in dialogue about explicit connections among representations. And the third one is that we alternate in the direction of the connections made among representations. So we don't just stick to one. We kind of rotate and we kind of show the students how to form connections with different types of representations. And with that, like, I kind of wanted to talk about how it's really beneficial for students with disabilities or students that speak multiple languages or just different languages. It would be a lot easier for them to kind of grasp the content that they're understanding, especially if they just moved from somewhere, or if a student just has disabilities and just grew up kind of like not really just having trouble. It would be a lot better for them to have the 5 different types of representations provided for them, so they can have more of like an opportunity to choose and pick and choose which one works best for them.
Yeah, it's especially important for students with disabilities because it reminds me of Julius Pepperwood in Dr. Tapley's class, the final that we were doing last night, where we were talking about different accommodations and modifications that would be good for him. So background in Julius Pepperwood, he has specific learning disorder with impairment in reading and written expression, and he has ADHD, and he has generalized anxiety disorder. So he has quite a bit of accommodations, and one of them was representing information in a visual way, in addition to the regular presentation of information. So it is really important for students with varying levels of abilities and disabilities to have multiple types of represented information because they might not be able to process things the same way as a fully general ed student.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good example. And another topic that I kind of wanted to talk about were the expectations for what teachers should be doing and what students should be doing. Like, there's very specific expectations for teachers to kind of promote opportunities for students to decide which types of representations they should be using depending on the problem. Like, it's on us to give our students as much means as representation as we possibly can, and kind of give them all the like learning tools to let them decide for themselves and learn for themselves. I'm not sure if we talked about it last episode or the episode before that of like kind of like doing your own like problem solving. I feel like this really goes into that because it gives them the tools to do it.
Yeah.
I just think that when they show like the different types of representations and what works for them, I think it always has to be appropriate, like meaning like it kind of relates to what they're learning, you know what I'm saying? Like for example, like if you were learning about like, I have graphing or stuff like that, you can't use really shapes, you know what I'm saying? Like that's more of a geometry thing, but you just have to make sure that it kind of corresponds to what they're learning and that it actually benefits them and actually helps them. Because like if you're a teacher and you know that you're using it in a like not in a right way or it doesn't really help them, that's where you should step in and be like, this is another way where you can use what you wanted to use visually. This is what you should be doing. This is what's going to help you.
Yeah.
I have an example from my pre-prac placement kind of. I know how Kira keeps saying like using things from your toolbox. But in my pre-prac general education classroom, the teacher made up little kind of, they're like crayon boxes, I want to say that that's what they're called, and each student has one and it's for math and it's their math toolkit. And everyone,
no way!
They have like a little mini whiteboard, an expo marker, they have some manipulatives in there, a number line, and it's available to them whenever they're doing math, whenever they're doing ST math. And I feel like that kind of connects because they can use it during instruction, they can use it while they're doing independent work or while they're doing ST math. And for ST math, they're all kind of on a different level. So it's applicable to anything that they're working on. And it's like they can, I don't know, if the question is like what happens when you have 3 and you take away 2? Like, they can use their blocks in there and do it that way.
Also, an example also from my feedback is that, honestly, like, when it comes to math, I haven't seen them using lots of, like, manipulatives in the classroom. When they do math, it's more for, like, centers and worksheet, and they're in 3rd grade, okay? And so, like, I haven't seen a lot of those, like, kind of, like, hands-on kind of stuff, and it's not like she doesn't, like, find ways for them to, like, learn visually, like, as much as, like, she should do, right? Just because I know that more than half the class is, like, multi-language learners and all these kind of, like, different kind of ways that they learn. And you know, I just think that she should incorporate little stuff visually. And what else was I gonna say? And like, I just feel like it makes it a little bit more difficult for students to learn math. And also they do a lot of this, it starts with a Z. I think it's something learning for math, Z learning or.
Yeah, I think it is Z something. I've heard of that.
But anyways, they do a lot of things online, you know. So for me,
Yeah.
it's hard for you to just like put on hands-on activities where they kind of like learn what to do. I mean, yeah, sure, like sometimes they do offer kind of like some like little pictures or little diagrams or graphs or whatever next to the problem, but like I feel like that's not really helping them, because like when I walk around and they're doing that, the kid is just like clicking. He doesn't even look at the picture. He just follows to an answer, boom, boom, boom. And then the teacher's like, she's like in the back of the room, like helping those that are like need a little bit more support and stuff like that. But like, if you're using like lots of computers, how are you gonna like incorporate like all these types of representations and like, cause like now if you look at like this generation, we're not doing lots of like stuff like that. It's more like online, and like sometimes like the schools are like, no, like they have to be doing this, they have to be going on this site, blah 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 blah. And like the teachers are kind of like, okay, like even she tells me, she's like, it's hard because like I have to do it, like it's what I have to be, like I have to do it, like I can't like find other ways or I'm gonna get in trouble. And I'm like, oh my god, like that sucks, because like how are you gonna
it's hard those? For the student and the teacher. I feel bad.
Sorry. I understand. I've heard my teachers talk about like those online assessment programs like extra math and stuff and ST math, and they're very helpful because all of the assessment results are like right there. Students do stuff at their own pace. And it's great that they have like diagrams and stuff, but when the students are working on it independently, because that's usually when they're doing it, those diagrams, they don't mean anything. The diagrams don't mean anything without instruction paired with it. If the students just left to their own devices to progress throughout grade levels on an online assessment thing, like they might not understand what the diagram means, or they might just be clicking through and again, I understand, you know, the online assessment tools are great, but they're just, if that's all you do, like, oh, you do your math lesson and then just go do that, instead of like maybe giving students opportunities to explore the manipulatives in the classroom or something, or do another fun activity where you can incorporate representations just like as an extension sort of thing. Like kids they're losing out on that.
And honestly, when my kids are doing ST math, they do it at the end of the day, and I'll like walk around to see who needs help. Like for me, obviously I'm not used to ST math, I never did that, but they're asking for help and I'm like, I don't even understand what it's asking, because there's no prompts or anything. It's like a video game kind of, and they're asking me for help and I'm like, I honestly don't even know like what it's asking, and like they're more familiar with me than I am, but I'm assuming for some students they're like, what the heck is this? What does this mean?
I know it'd be really confusing for me. I wouldn't like that. I never liked anything on the computer.
Like Kara said, like they're like really beneficial, and I feel like I think it would be fun for me as a kid. I would love to do it because it's on a Chromebook and I don't have to like for kids like that can work independently, like it works well for them. But like finish your lesson, do like a nice class activity where you use kind of these visuals and like add it into your lesson and then do it all together. Then they can do whatever they need to do on their computer.
Yeah, because honestly, at the end of the day, it's proper usage. Because I've seen, and I'm not trying to bash any teacher who's done either of these things, or like this, but I've seen proper usage of ST Math as a way to learn, and improper usage. And when I was at one of my placements last year, the kids were super motivated on ST Math by Gigi. And Gigi's the penguin on ST Math, if you don't know.
Yep.
They were very motivated by Gigi, getting her to the island or whatever it does. And I think the teacher told them that she can't get to the island unless they actually try. So the kids are super into it, and they did extremely well. They tested very high. They had very high assessment results. It helped them. They were great in math when I saw them just in regular instruction. Like it was used in addition to other things. But then it's just like when teachers have to be assessing the kids, and they're just like, oh, go do it, and the kids don't have that connection. They don't have that like spoken objective to them, like help Gigi out by doing your best. Like it's just like they're clicking.
Exciting. Like at least make it exciting. And I feel like with that, I don't know, it doesn't really hold the teachers responsible if the students don't understand the material, because they're just kind of clicking through it. Rather than if they had like a toolbox, it holds the students and the teachers responsible if they're not understanding, because they're using every form that they can to possibly understand what they're trying to learn. And with that, I kind of wanted to talk about my placement for my gateway assignment, because while I had the students like do addition problems and subtraction problems, where I would read out a word problem that I created, and I would ask them to draw it out for me, write it in like a math equation, and just do it like just either like a five group, an array, or a line. And I would just like go around the room once everybody finished doing their like, what's it called? Their thing on their whiteboard. I would just pick out different examples that were different but that had the correct work, and I would put it under the camera, and I would show all the students like different ways that they could possibly solve the same like solution. And with that, I kind of also wanted to talk about Miss Brooks, because I saw that she used a lot of using and connecting representations in her lesson, because she provided paper pictures for the students to use to like physically group it out and see it before they had to create like a fraction like with numbers and like writing it down. They were able to do it like physically and work it out with like people. They were able to work it out like with the people in their groups.
I want to also add briefly with that, I may be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure when showing them the representation, she also modeled it. Because representations are great, but if the kids don't know what to do with it, like whatever, that's not going to help them. But with Miss Brooks, I'm pretty sure she like physically would like did it on one kid's paper, like shading in the portions that are represented.
Like she literally let them like shade it in if they had to and everything. Like that's another thing that's like super important. Not only could they like shape it out and like form it with the paper and their hands, they were also able to like draw it out and like visualize, symbolize, verbal, contextual, physical, like all 5 representations were kind of put in that lesson. And I also wrote down that the students had to use previous lesson ideas to figure out the answers for the current lesson. So Miss Brooks also had the students apply previous knowledge
make
to
those
the
connections.
Lesson. To make those connections from those previous lessons.
Miss Brooks is really all that.
She's really winning right now.
She knows what
she's gassed up by our podcast for sure.
Is that celebrity?
Miss
Brooks, most definitely. Very good example if you want to be a teacher.
Yes. And I think right here is a perfect place to stop unless anybody else has something that they want to say.
I do not.
No.
Okay, thank you for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.
The credits for this week's podcast are Principles to Action and Miss Brooks' video on Google Classroom.